The moment the case hit the cabin floor, every head in economy turned. Not because of the sound, which was a short, brutal crack of aluminum on composite, but because of the silence that followed it and the man in seat 22A who did not move at all. His name was Dr. Marcus Webb, 53 years old, with the kind of face that had learned, somewhere between the Afghani desert and 3 NASA mission briefings, to hold itself very still when everything around it wanted to fall apart. His skin was the deep brown of old walnut, mapped with fine lines at the corners of eyes that had once tracked faint photons across 300 light-years of vacuum. Eyes that now registered only light and shadow, that distinguished a window from a wall, a human silhouette from an empty seat, and not much else. A degenerative retinal condition had taken his central vision in his left eye 18 months ago. It was finishing the job on his right. He knew this. He had made his peace with it, or something close to peace, the way you make peace with anything large enough to rearrange your understanding of yourself. He was flying United Flight 777 from Houston Intercontinental to Dulles on a Wednesday morning in October. The sky above Texas still ink-dark at 5:40 a.m., the tarmac lights smearing into soft coronas in the residual haze from the previous night's rain. He had a window seat he could no longer properly use, chosen out of habit from 30 years of air travel. The Boeing 737 smelled the way they all smelled. Recycled air carrying someone's breakfast burrito from the terminal, a ghost of industrial cleaner, the faint metallic undertone of the aircraft itself, breathing. He wore a charcoal wool cardigan over a dark Oxford shirt, comfortable slacks, and sneakers. His cane was folded into the seat pocket. In the overhead bin, carefully positioned flat against the back wall and wrapped in a custom foam case, was his spectrograph, a compact, irreplaceable research instrument calibrated to his specifications over 4 years, built to assist in a collaborative study with the Johns Hopkins Astrophysics Department, the final project of a career that the darkness was slowly, methodically ending. He was not afraid of flying. He was, in fact, one of those people who found the initial violence of takeoff, the way the aircraft seized the air and refused it, quietly exhilarating. He had attended the academy at 17, flown F-16s over 2 combat theaters, survived an ejection over the Hindu Kush that had taken 3 vertebrae and returned him, 18 months later, still walking. He had a Congressional Space Medal of Honor in a box in a closet in his Houston apartment, and he almost never thought about it. He was thinking this morning about his daughter's wedding in 3 weeks, about the vows he was going to read aloud whether he could see her face or not, about whether he should say something to her about the groom who he liked but did not entirely trust. He was thinking about that and not about any of this, yet. The flight attendant working economy was named Deja. Badge freshly polished, a natural ease in the narrow aisle that came from 11 years of doing it, a warm formality in her smile that set the cabin at a particular frequency of calm. 2 rows ahead of Marcus, a retired schoolteacher named Bet was already asleep against the window, her cardigan pulled over her like a blanket. Across the aisle, a young software engineer with noise-canceling headphones around his neck was squinting at a laptop. The captain's voice, measured and unhurried, had come through the intercom moments earlier to report clear skies above 10,000 feet and a slightly early arrival. Then the boarding door, which should have been closed, opened again. She came through it the way a storm front comes through an open door. Not loudly, not yet, but with a pressure change you felt before you heard anything. Her name was Claudine Marsh, 51, and she had the look of a woman who had confused the accumulation of expensive things with the accumulation of worth. Her blazer was Escada, cream with fine chalk stripes, and it fit the way clothes fit when someone has spent real money trying to make them look effortless. Her hair was a precise honey blonde that does not occur in nature and costs $800 to maintain. She dragged a hard-shell Rimowa carry-on behind her in champagne aluminum and held a Goyard tote over one forearm like a shield. Her sunglasses, Tom Ford cat-eye in tortoiseshell, were still on her face at 5:43 in the morning in a sealed aircraft. She was in 21B, middle seat, 1 row ahead of Marcus. "This is completely unacceptable," she said before she had even reached her row. The gate agent who had escorted her back aboard, a young man named Terrell whose composure was admirable under the circumstances, walked half a step behind her. "I booked this flight 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. I have status. Ma'am, your assigned seat is 21B. I'm aware of what it says. I'm telling you what it should say." She stopped at row 19, stared at the overhead bin, already full, and did not move. Whose bag is this? She pointed at a black duffel with the authority of someone pointing at evidence. The man in 19A, a heavy-set man named Gerald who was simply trying to get to his sister's retirement party, looked up carefully. It's mine. You need to move it. There's no room in. I didn't ask about room. I asked you to move it. She lifted his bag herself, rotated it, forced it into a configuration that could not possibly work, and then gave up and shoved it back. The bin wouldn't close. She left it open. Deja moved toward her with the practiced composure of someone who has seen this particular human weather pattern before. Ms. Marsh, let me help you find space for your bag. I don't need help finding space. I need a different seat. I shouldn't be in a middle seat. Do you know who I am? She said it without irony, without a trace of self-awareness, as if the question were perfectly reasonable. I do have your name from the manifest. David Estabrook is your airline's VP of Customer Experience. I'll be speaking with him this morning. She produced her phone and began actually dialing. The gate agent Terrell had quietly disappeared, as if he had never existed. Deja stood still, hands clasped, face neutral, and waited. The call did not connect. Claudine stared at her phone. Then she put it in her tote, moved to row 21, dropped into her middle seat with performative suffering, and looked around for a new problem. She found one in the bin directly above row 22. What is that? She was looking at the foam case, Marcus's spectrograph, flat against the back wall of the bin where he had carefully placed it. That's mine, Marcus said. His voice was even quiet, carrying. It's a scientific instrument. It's secured. She looked at him. Something moved across her face. A calculation, fast and invisible to anyone who wasn't watching for it. Her Rimowa wouldn't fit in the overhead with the foam case there. She processed this. She reached up. Ma'am, Deja said. 3 rows away, her voice sharpening. Please don't. Claudine yanked the foam case from the overhead bin. Came down at an angle. Marcus's hands were already moving, the instinct that decades of fine instrument handling had built into his nervous system. But he couldn't see its trajectory clearly, could only track it as a dark mass descending fast. He got one hand up. The case caught his forearm and hit the armrest and then the floor in that short, final crack of sound that had turned every head in the cabin. He reached down, found the handle, lifted it, set it in his lap. He did not speak. He ran his hands along the case's latches, both intact, then along the padded corners, checking for deformation. The foam interior was dense, the instrument double-padded. He wouldn't know the actual damage until he opened it under decent light. He would not open it here. He held the case in his lap and breathed. The cabin was still the way a room is still after a door has slammed. It was in the way, Claudine said. She was loading her Rimowa into the now-vacated bin. People can't just put things wherever they want. From 18C, a woman named Priya, traveling with her 8-year-old daughter, Mia, made a sound that was not quite a word. Across the aisle, the engineer with the headphones had taken them off entirely. An older man, 2 rows back, a retired postal worker named Harold, was sitting very straight in his seat, watching. Ms. Marsh. Deja's voice had changed registers. Still controlled, but no longer warm. That was a passenger's personal property, and you removed it from the overhead. It was poorly stowed. It was a hazard. It was properly stowed. I need you to sit down and keep your hands away from other passengers' belongings. I'll sit down when I'm ready to sit down. She wasn't shouting. That was somehow worse, the flatness of it, the absolute certainty that she was correct, that none of this required volume because volume was for people who had to fight. And I need a cup of coffee. Hot, not warm. We haven't taken off yet. I'm aware. She finally sat. She looked at Marcus again. Something about his stillness seemed to irritate her specifically. The way he was holding the case, unhurried, not trembling, not arguing, not performing distress for her benefit. He was looking straight ahead, which she might not have understood meant he could not fully see her face. You people, she said, the phrase arriving like something slid under a door. Always taking up more space than you need. Mia, in 18B, tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, why did she? Hush, baby, Priya whispered, and pulled her daughter close. Marcus set the case carefully on the empty seat beside him. He had paid for it, specifically for the instrument, and clasped his hands in his lap. The overhead bin above him was empty now. The cabin had the quality of a room where everyone has heard something they can't unhear. Deja pressed the call button above row 21. Then she pressed it again. Then she picked up the intercom handset and spoke 3 numbers, very quietly. From the front of the aircraft, behind the closed galley curtain, something shifted. The plane had not moved. The boarding door was still closed. The clock on the bulkhead display read 5:51 a.m. Marcus turned his face slightly toward the window. In his peripheral vision, the narrow band of sight still available to him, he could see the darkness outside beginning to separate itself from the tarmac, the first suggestion of gray at the edge of the Houston sky. He thought about light pollution, the old enemy, and how it had once frustrated him during observations. How laughably small that frustration seemed now. He thought about his spectrograph. He thought about 4 years. He reached into the inside pocket of his cardigan and felt the edge of something there. Not to remove it, not yet. Just to confirm it was present. A small rectangle of laminated card and metal, worn smooth at one corner from years of this same gesture. He let his fingers rest there for a moment, then withdrew his hand. He waited. Claudine received her coffee. This was, in retrospect, the mistake, not Deja's, who had brought it in the spirit of de-escalation, in the hope that warmth and compliance might settle the woman before the flight began. The coffee came in the standard United paper cup, 180 degrees, sleeve-fitted. Claudine accepted it without acknowledgement, took one sip, and turned back to face row 22. The spectrograph, she said. That word. What is that exactly? Marcus looked toward her. A research instrument. What kind of research? Astrophysics. She let a pause expand. So you're telling me you brought a telescope on a commercial flight? A spectrograph is not a telescope. A spectrograph. She tried the word the way people try words they find pretentious. And what exactly gives you the right to take up 2 seats for your hobby? I paid for both seats. Good for you. She turned away, then back. You know, I have a conference in Washington, an actual professional obligation, and I've been treated like baggage since I arrived at this gate. Meanwhile she gestured at the case, the empty seat, the whole arrangement of his existence. You get to just sit there with your little science project and everyone acts like you're something special. Harold, in 24A, leaned forward slightly. Priya's hand tightened around Mia's shoulder. You're not something special, Claudine said. You're in economy. Marcus said nothing. Say something. Her voice had developed a new edge. She wanted the friction, needed it. His silence was an offense of its own. He turned his face toward the window again. What happened next happened with the compressed logic of something that had been building since before she boarded, before she dialed the VP's number, before she'd lifted his case from the bin. She actually stood in the aisle, 5:58 a.m., plane not yet departed, and picked up her coffee with the deliberate calm of someone who has already decided, and turned and threw it. The lid had loosened on one side. The cup hit Marcus across the left shoulder and the side of his neck, the coffee coming out in a sheet, soaking through the cardigan instantly. The cup struck the window and fell. The sound of it was the sound of every passenger's throat tightening at once. A sudden collective intake, a negative sound. Heat. That was what registered first. Not pain, the cardigan had taken some of it, but heat, spreading down his neck and across his shoulder, seeping into the Oxford shirt beneath. He felt his hands grip the armrest. He felt his jaw set. He felt, from some very deep and practiced place, the old discipline close around him like a fist, not suppressing the anger but containing it, using it, redirecting it into perfect stillness. His face did not change. There, Claudine said. Now you have something to cry about. The young engineer, his name was Jamal, 26, on his way to a job interview, was standing in the aisle before he had consciously decided to stand. What is wrong with you? The words came out raw, unfiltered. "Sit down," she said, not looking at him. "You just threw." I said sit down. She looked at Deja, who was already moving toward them from the galley, her face holding a precise, terrifying composure. "This passenger is threatening me. I need him removed." "No one is being removed," Deja said, her voice carrying cleanly over the cabin noise. "Ms. Marsh, you need to sit down right now." She pressed the overhead call button 3 times in rapid succession, the specific signal. "Right now. I was assaulted by that case. It fell on my. You removed that case from the overhead bin. I watched you do it." Priya's daughter Mia was crying quietly, her face pressed into her mother's arm. Harold in 24A had his phone out, the red recording light visible. 2 rows ahead, a woman traveling alone looked at the ceiling with her eyes closed, as if praying for altitude. Marcus had reached for the napkins in the seat pocket. He was patting his neck and shoulder methodically, efficiently, without drama. A small thing, but the cabin watched him do it, watched the economy of his movements, the complete absence of performance, and something in the watching changed the room. From the front, the galley curtain parted. A man came through who had not been visible before. Mid-40s, medium build, gray sport coat, the kind of face that had learned not to announce itself. He had been in 14D. He walked toward row 21 with the unhurried, purposeful step of a person who does not need to hurry to make clear what is happening. "Ma'am," he said, "Federal Air Marshal. You need to sit down." Claudine stared at him. "That's not a request." She sat. Marcus turned his face toward the Air Marshal. He could make out the shape of him, the posture. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his cardigan. He removed the credential wallet. It was navy blue, slightly worn at the hinge, the NASA seal embossed in gold on the front. Below the seal, the words he never led with, never used as armor unless the moment specifically demanded it. He opened it and held it so the air marshal could see, so Deja could see, so the row in front of him, where Claudine was sitting, could see. The air marshal read it. Something moved in his face, brief, controlled. "Dr. Webb," he said, quietly, respectful. The credential read, Dr. Marcus J. Webb, NASA Astronaut Corps, Senior Mission Specialist, retired. Defense Intelligence Agency, Consulting Liaison, GS-15 equivalent. Congressional Medal recipient. Deja read it over the air marshal's shoulder, and her expression did not change, but her eyes went still in a way that was its own kind of response. Harold in 24A lowered his phone slightly. Jamal, still half standing in the aisle, looked from the credential to Marcus and back again. Claudine had not seen it yet. She was looking at the air marshal, still recalibrating, still searching for the angle that would return her to the position of wronged party. "He's a consultant," she said. "That doesn't." The air marshal turned so she could see the open credential. "This gentleman," he said, with a deliberate patience that was itself a form of force, "is a retired NASA mission specialist, a Defense Intelligence Agency liaison officer, and a recipient of the Congressional Space Medal of Honor. You just assaulted a federal contractor on a commercial aircraft." The cabin went very quiet. Claudine's face performed several things in quick succession. First, the slight narrowing that was her baseline skepticism, the reflex doubt. Then, the reading of the seal, the name, the rank. Then, the specific quality of stillness that comes when a person's model of reality is failing to load. Then, the recovery attempt, a slight lift of the chin, a repositioning of the jaw. Then, the moment the math resolved, and she understood that the recovery was not available. She said nothing. "Captain Martinez is being notified," the air marshal said. "We'll be returning to the gate." A beat. Then the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Martinez. We'll be holding at the gate for a short period while we address a passenger situation. We apologize for the delay and thank you for your patience." The aircraft did not move. Outside, through Marcus's window, the Houston sky had gone from black to a deep, bruised blue. "Ms. Marsh," the air marshal turned back. "I need you to come with me. I want to speak to." "You'll have that opportunity." Right now I need you to stand and come with me. She stood. She picked up her Goyard tote. Leave the bag, he said. She left the bag. Marcus had watched all of this in his peripheral vision, shapes and movement and the particular angles of people doing what authority requires. He had not spoken. He was still holding the credential wallet. He closed it now, slowly, and set it on the armrest. Deja was standing beside him. Dr. Webb. Her voice was low. I am so sorry. He looked up toward her, not quite at her face, but toward it. You handled this professionally. Thank you. Your shoulder. There's a first aid kit. I'm all right. From 18B, Mia had lifted her face from her mother's arm and was watching him with the direct, unself-conscious attention of children. Are you a real astronaut? She asked. Her mother made a soft sound of apology. I was, Marcus said, and something in his voice when he said it. Not pride, not grief, not nostalgia, but something that held all three without being any of them. Made Priya look at him and then look away, blinking. Claudine was at the front of the aircraft now. The boarding door had been reopened. Through the gap, the sound of the terminal came in, flat, fluorescent, ordinary. 2 Houston Airport Authority officers waited at the jetway door. Behind them, a woman in an FBI windbreaker held a clipboard. The air marshal guided Claudine through the door. She passed Harold, who said nothing. She passed Jamal, who looked at the seat back in front of him with tremendous focus. She passed Priya and Mia, who stared at her with clear, unclouded eyes. She did not look at any of them. She did not look back at row 22. The door closed. The aircraft was quiet in the way that rooms are quiet after something ugly has left them. Harold started clapping first. 2 slow claps, deliberate like he was deciding something. Then Jamal. Then the woman in the front who had been praying for altitude. It spread unevenly, imperfectly, the way real things spread. Not a wave, not choreographed, but genuine, the kind of applause that is not really about celebration but about the need to mark something, to say, we were here, we saw it, it mattered. Marcus sat with his hands folded around the foam case in his lap. He did not stand. He did not raise a hand in acknowledgement. He simply let it come, the sound, and held it. When it faded, the captain's voice returned. Ladies and gentlemen, we've cleared the passenger situation and have received updated clearance from ground control. We should be pushing back in approximately 8 minutes. Thank you again for your patience. And welcome aboard. United Flight 777 lifted into the Texas dawn 41 minutes behind schedule, climbing through a sky that was doing the thing Marcus had spent most of his life pointing instruments at, that transformation, the specific alchemy of a dark sky meeting light, the colors that have no names because they only exist for 4 minutes in the morning before they become something else. He could see it, faintly, in the corner of his remaining vision. A smear of color. Enough. He did not open the spectrograph case until he landed at Dulles. In a quiet corner of the terminal, a gate agent named Sylvia standing nearby because Deja had called ahead. He worked through the latches with practiced hands. Inside, the instrument was intact. The calibration sensor on the secondary mount had a hairline crack in its housing, cosmetic, he would later confirm. The instrument itself was unharmed. He sat with it for a moment, hands resting on the foam surround. Somewhere in the United Airlines system, a report was being filed. Criminal charges were pending. Assault on a federal contractor, interference with a flight crew, 2 federal counts, 1 airline count. A civil complaint from Marcus's legal team filed 4 days later. Claudine Marsh received a lifetime ban from United Airlines the following morning and a letter from the airline's CEO that was, in its legal precision, devastating. The federal contractor charge carried a potential sentence of up to 8 years. Marcus called his daughter that afternoon. She answered on the second ring, and he could hear from the first syllable that she already knew. Someone on the flight had posted the video, and it had traveled the way things travel now, instantly everywhere. Dad, she said. I'm fine, he said. Dad. The instrument's fine too, he said. I checked. She laughed, despite herself. He could hear that she was crying slightly. He listened to her for a while, the particular music of his daughter's voice, and did not say anything about the vows, or the groom, or any of the things he'd been turning over on the morning flight. He looked out the terminal window at the Dulles tarmac. The sky was a flat, clean afternoon blue, the sky that has no depth that astronomers hate because all the interesting things are beyond it and completely invisible. He thought about how much sky he still had left to see, and how he intended to use it. He put his credential wallet back in his pocket. He picked up the spectrograph case. He walked toward the exit, cane unfolded now, tapping the clean rhythm of a man who knows where he's going. Outside, the October air arrived against his face, cool and sharp, carrying something that might have been rain on the way. He stood there for a moment and let it come.